It's time for a Big Blue Kickoff Live.
Nobody can ever tell you that you couldn't do it, because you did.
On Giants.com.
You know what I saw? New York Giant pride.
And the Giants mobile app.
17-14 is the final. One touchdown, we are world champions. Believe it, and it will happen.
Part of the Giants Podcast Network.
Let's go out there like a bunch of crazy dogs. Have some fun.
Happy Friday, everybody. Our final Big Blue Kickoff Live from the NFL Combine in Indianapolis. John Schmeelk, Paul Dottino. Of course, Big Blue Kickoff Live is brought to you by Cadillac, the official luxury vehicle of the New York Football Giants. Joining us as friend of the program, you've seen him on our content a lot, Connor Rogers from NBC Sports. Connor, what's going on, brother?
It's great to see you guys. Our annual chat, always a lot of fun,
yes,
man. Good
always
to be
a lot
with
of
you guys.
fun. And we've been focusing on the top 10 a lot so far this week, so we know you dig deep.
Okay.
You can always find them on the Stock Exchange podcast, talking NFL Draft all the time with Trevor Sycamore, who was our guest a couple days ago. Trevor did a great job. So we want to focus on some day 2 names for you, Connor. Who are some of the guys that, if you're a team sitting at the top of round 2, you're going to be sitting there around pick 27 on your knees praying to whoever you pray to that this guy might drop to me at the top of round 2 that you really like?
I mean, think of some of the quarterbacks that could go in the first round or could not, right? I mean, you look at Michael Penix from Washington, phenomenal year. He's a guy that is kind of on that fringe around 1. Even Bo Nix from Oregon, a lot of people are projecting him in round 1, but look at Will Levis last year, right? That's all you need to say. So you look at some of those high-end quarterbacks. I think both are starters in this league, but if you can get them at the top of the second round instead of the back end of going into round 1, that's something that's really exciting to me. Everyone's trying to figure out the wide receivers and how they go, right? The top 10's easy. Marvin Harrison Jr. and Malik Neighbors, they're top 5 players in this draft. Roma Dunze, Brian Thomas Jr., those guys are going to go really early. But when you look at the back end of round 1, how about a speedster like Troy Franklin? He's someone who,
love him.
I mean, awesome dude. He's going to absolutely fly. 4.3 flat is legitimately in range for a guy that's 6'2", 6'3".
And runs routes pretty well.
That's what I said to him. I got to sit down with him, and I was like, people don't give you enough credit for being a polished route runner. And the work he puts into that, his relationship with Bo Nix at college. And how about Adonai Mitchell as well from Texas? He's another guy, back end round 1, top of day 2, size, speed, wins down the field. Everybody's in this stare down of, man, this wide receiver class is great. I got 14 in the top 75. That's pretty rare air. And how early are they going to go? Who's going to make it out of round 1? Then you look at the Giants, right? 2 more picks in the top 50 outside of that other first-round pick. It's a weird divide, right, guys? Because you can get a great wide receiver at 6, but you might be able to take a different position, a blue-chip position, and go get a wide receiver or 2 on day 2.
Yeah.
Because this class is just so talented. And how many we see it every single year that the wide receivers that fall to day 2 and day 3, there's always a handful that still go on to be superstars.
All right, so because there are so many solid prospects, and I'll use the word solid in rounds 2 and 3, is that going to make some teams a little less likely to mortgage those picks to move up in the first round?
Yeah.
Or not?
No, this happens every year now. Teams are looking – and now it depends on the type of team, right? If you're Kansas City or Buffalo, you're looking at what you have under center, and you're looking at how close you are every year. For Kansas City, they actually win the Super Bowl. For Buffalo, it always feels like they're right there. You can be a little bit more aggressive because those teams typically don't go into camp and say, hey, we can watch 9 rookies on a 53-man roster. They can't do that. So what are you doing with those picks? Go up and get a great player that you feel like can help you in the window you have right now. But when you look at the teams picking in the top 15, they might not want to give away that capital. This is a great draft, okay? If you have multiple picks like the Giants in the top 50, you're sitting there. If you're Joe Shane, you're like, I'm going to get 3 starters in the top 50, and these guys might start for me right out of the gate. We think they will.
And the guy at 6 might be a Pro Bowl caliber player in
I
year 1.
completely agree, especially if his name is Malik Neighbors or Brock Bowers, okay? So when that comes out right there, I'm sitting there and going, look at the guards and centers that'll be there in the top 50 as well. It's a great center class. I mean, and I know John Michael Schmitz was taken last year, but these guys all have flexibility to play multiple spots on the interior offensive line. That's what you have to keep in mind. Like Jackson Powers Johnson from Oregon, the big center, he's 330 pounds at center. But he moves like a tackle.
Right.
That's a guy that if he could play guard in his sleep if he needed to. So this is a really, really good group at O-line, wide receiver. It feels like really key positions if you're trying to put more points on the board.
All right, so let's go through some of those names at the top of the second round on the offensive line, right?
Okay.
Let's say they either go wide receiver, and I guess we could touch on the quarterbacks at the end too, and they still need that guard or tackle, depending on how they think about Evan Neal. who are some of the top of second-round offensive linemen, interior or tackle, that you think fans should have their eyes on?
I mean, you look at Jordan Morgan from Arizona, a guy that is a left tackle in college, great feet. He was great at pulling in the run game. It was impressive.
He's very mobile.
He is very
He's got
mobile.
good feet.
You wonder how the transition will be for him if he moves inside the guard. Can he drop his hips? Can he anchor, take on that kind of power? How quick you have to be off the ball as a guard, because it's not the same runway as a tackle where you're dealing with these wide alignment edge rushers. It's point A to B.
But you got to get your hands up right away.
Those hands are up. You
quick.
drop your hips. It's so much strength really in your legs and your butt. It's a lot to ask of these guys. So Morgan is a guy I'm interested to watch that transition. There's guards, though, I don't worry about that transition because they actually play interior offensive line. You think of Dominic Pooney from Kansas.
Yeah.
You think of
like him.
Christian Haynes from UConn is a beast.
Great Senior Bowl.
Oh, my God. He was the star of the Senior Bowl of the offensive lineman. I mean, nobody could beat him, and he got into a little tussle with one of the LSU guys throwing helmets. I loved that
Jordan
energy.
Jefferson,
Jordan
right? Chucked his
Jefferson.
helmet? Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I think he might have called him a big baby or something like that. It was very funny. I was right there. It was
Haynes called Jefferson a big baby?
He said something
That's funny.
along
I
the
love
lines. He was, I mean, his confidence was like, this dude doesn't care. He's coming from UConn. He's ready to play in the NFL. I think he was a 5-year starter, so it's different energy. So those are guys that I love on rounds 2 and 3 on the offensive line.
Where do you like Layden Robinson from Texas A&M?
He's a weird one because 2 years ago I thought he could be a first-round pick. I mean, you look at the
puzzling.
He's somebody that when the switch is on, you run behind him 20 times a game because he's just going to simply relocate people. Now, the thing with him, the inconsistency in pass pro does worry me a little bit. Sometimes it's the feet. Sometimes he just gets stuck with his upper body kind of ducking his head and lunging a little bit. So he would be more of a draft and stash player for me when I think of guys like that 4th round and on, that I like the depth. I actually think if I can work on some things with his hands and his base and pass pro, I have a starter, but I wouldn't want to throw him into the fire right away where all the other guys we talked about, they're coming in and they're playing NFL football from day one on an offensive line.
You know, running back is interesting. We might not see one picked in rounds, well, no, definitely not in round 1. We might not see one picked in round 2
I agree.
in this draft. But then in round 3, you might have like 8
the bonanza
selected. It's going to be a bonanza.
That's the number I've been setting.
I think it's
8.
realistic.
Yeah.
And I think we saw a lot of the guys out there today. Interesting, a lot of different body types, a lot of different shapes and sizes, which is fun. All good guys. Listen to the talk. Really, really fun group. What's your flavor when it comes to the running back position if you're trying to, let's say the Giants can't figure something out with Saquon and they're trying to bring somebody in to maybe share the load with Eric Gray or just be a part of that running back rotation?
The biggest, scariest one, Braylon Allen. I mean, honestly, this is a dude.
Literally biggest.
The biggest one. And he just turned 20. And he's going to be in the NFL.
Is he only 20 years old?
Yeah, he enrolled in college early.
I didn't realize
he was
that.
taking carries for Wisconsin as a 17-year-old.
Yeah.
And he's, 6'3", 240?
That's
he turned 20 in January. So you're talking about he's going to play his rookie season as a 20-year-old. What is Braylon Allen going to look like at 22, 23? I mean, he's going to be Derrick Henry. And I'm not saying as a player, but as a fit, like the build.
Right.
So
his time's going to be big here.
He can run. I mean, I thought people complained a little bit about the pass game. I dove into the tape this year and saw him getting better. He's starting to understand his assignments in pass pro. You're never going to worry about the size. He came to Wisconsin. They didn't know if he'd play linebacker. So now he's blocking linebackers because he is really a linebacker that plays running back. He's just a bowling ball downhill. I think when you get him to the second level at the NFL a little bit more than they were able to do, it's going to be scary. And once again, 20-year-old, so maybe the kid's not ready to come out of the gate right away as a superstar running back. But if I'm betting on a guy in round 3 because of the upside, it's Braylon Allen for sure.
I got to give you a local guy, St. Joseph's High School in Montvale in Bergen County, just so close to the Giants and the Jets both. Of course, is Esteem from Notre Dame.
Yeah.
Just got done talking to him, and he's promising that we're all going to be shocked at his 40 time. He says, I'm a lot faster than they think.
I hope so.
Well, let's see.
He creates yards unlike any other guy in this draft, it feels like. The amount of tackles that he makes guys miss, right? The missed tackles force, which is something PFF tracks really, really well. He's that guy, him and Trey Benson, right? And Blake Corum a little bit, where they're tackled behind the line of scrimmage and then they somehow got 4 yards. And that's not appreciated enough because in the NFL, you get the ball and realistically there's going to be a defender in your face every single time. It's just brutal like that. So the guys that can turn dead plays or negative plays into intermediate gains or short gains, that's a skill that's not valued enough in my opinion. We fall in love with the 60-yard runs, but that's not the NFL, right? It's not the NFL. So I think with him and I think with Benson and Corum, they're really good at that, and that's why I'd love to have them in a committee right away.
I think Corum's 40 time here is one of the most important numbers we're going to see.
I think so, too, and I'm a little nervous about that long speed, to be honest with you.
Do you think he could be over a 4.6?
I think that's where I'd have him, right there.
At about 4.6?
If he ran anything high 4.5s, we're all good. That passes the test.
I'm good with that, but I think if he drops below that 4.6 mark, teams, that's that's you're getting to the threshold point where teams might be, I don't know. And it stinks because he's a fun player. He changes direction really well. But that long speed could, I think, scare teams away a little bit.
And it happens with the running backs, right? The most recent guy I think of that is like Josh Jacobs. Josh Jacobs, I think, was a 4.6 guy, but his power was different. So it's hard to make that comparison.
20 pounds.
Right. He just runs right through you. So, yeah, this running back class, it doesn't have that blue chip talent. You're looking for the depth talent.
How about Bucky Irving? He's a guy that I really like on tape, but, boy, I saw him up there. He's tiny.
Right, and it's
too tiny.
He's really tiny.
He's got to be a third down back at the next level.
No doubt.
The problem with that is, this is someone that then you're going to ask to be in pass pro a lot.
Yeah,
so
you got it.
This has become a weird thing when scouting for the NFL lately is all these undersized running backs, you kind of clap your hands and go, oh, he's a day 3 third down back. Okay, when you talk to an NFL running back coach or an offensive line coach, they don't give a you-know-what about what they do running or catching if they can't block because the quarterback cannot get killed from a blown assignment.
You don't get on the field.
Yeah, right. You don't get – this is a perfect example. You guys know I do Jets pre- and post-game. I love Izzy Abanikanda coming out of Pitt, and I think he's going to be a really good player. The Jets weren't ready to play him this year because they felt like he needed to get to a certain place in pass pro where he basically had a redshirt year until the end of the year. And that's what happens to a lot of these college guys that aren't in pass pro very often. And that's my thing with Bucky. I like when he has the ball in his hands. I think he's very elusive in space. But like you guys said, without the size and without the pass pro experience, it might just be a longer road.
Now, there's one position that we usually talk about high in the first round, and that's cover corner, right?
Yeah.
I had a scout tell me last night in the hotel lobby, my God, I can't believe how many third-round corners there are who can play.
Yes.
And there's nickels, and there's boundaries.
Oh, yeah.
Whatever you want, we can get them in the third round. That's incredible.
It is. The nickel class is silly this year. Mikey Sanders still from Michigan. That's a converted wide receiver.
Another small guy.
He's slender, but, he mirrors unlike any.
He makes plays.
These college wide receivers that have a two-way go, asking these slot guys to cover them one-on-one is an insane ask.
Especially on the wide side of the field.
Oh, it's ridiculous.
Forget it.
It's ridiculous. So I think that when you look at this corner, number one, I agree. This is a deep corner class. We're going to have a ton go in the first round, and then we're going to sit there on day 2 and go, wow, there's a lot left. It's the era of 7-on-7. Many of these kids all year round are playing wide receiver or they're covering wide receivers or kids are throwing the football. And it's honestly a lot of fun throughout this process. You have these great athletes. They're 6'1" with arms down to the ground. They run 4.3. And then you just got to dial into a big thing, can they tackle? Because this league, how much wide zone do we see? These guys got to come up and tackle. Are they going to be able to press? Because not all of them are asked to press in college. So are they going to be able to adapt to our diverse coverage schemes? And then what do you have between the ears? Because so much of it is asked of these DBs at the NFL level from a defensive scheme standpoint. But there's going to be a million corners going in the top 75.
I think we're also unlikely to see a safety going around number 1.
I would agree.
Who is a day 2 safety that if the Giants cannot come to terms with Xavier McKinney, who's their classic single high center fielder type that you like in that day 2 area that could step in there and play that center field role at safety. Which, by the way, is very important in Shane Bowen's defense, by the way.
Sure, right, which makes you wonder how serious do the talks get with McKinney to return. We'll see. Tyler Nubin from Minnesota has been asked to do everything. That's the key, and he's been good at everything. The ball skills have been there, multiple interceptions every single year. He's somebody that, when you see him in single high, I love the range, and he's got great eyes. The instincts. And if you've watched that defense a couple of years ago, Antoine Winfield Jr. was asked the same thing. To say, hey, go play in the box like a linebacker, come downhill and hit, fearless, good tackler. Okay, go play single high, and you got to read where the quarterback's looking to make a play on the ball. He could do that. Nubin's awesome. I said I was shocked he didn't declare last year. I thought he was pro-ready to go. Now he's another year under his belt. Minnesota wasn't really good this year, so he dealt with a little bit of adversity with that team. And then, one more that I talked to here that was asked to do everything, and I think it hurt him, was Cam Kinchins. I think Kinchins had 11 picks over the last 2 years. And I said that to him, and he goes, I had 11 picks 1 year in high school. And and it's true. And with Kinchins, he played so much slot, wide corner, strong safety, on the line of scrimmage, and then he played free safety. But if you tell Cam Kinchins you're a free safety for 80 to 90% of our defensive snaps, he's going to get 6 picks if you have that comfort with him, right? And he's fearless coming downhill. Some other things are still catching up to speed with him where he's not a first-round safety or anything like that. But I think Miami put too much on his plate, and it limited some of his production.
Interesting.
All right, we hear that the linebacker core is not really strong, right?
Yeah.
But we also know that there's such a tendency now to get a little bit bigger to go against the grain because all defenses got smaller and got quicker. So now maybe you need a little bit of a thumper at linebacker that you might be able to get 3rd or 4th round who's going to wind up being a little more impactful than people think.
Yeah.
You have a name in mind.
I think Cedric Gray might be that kind of guy, right? Or, you look at him, and then everybody's kind of wondering how these guys are going to go because there's no first-round linebacker. So then you get into the day 2 guys. Junior Colson from Michigan. He's not a thumper, but he is sideline to sideline and creates chaos. And I think he's strong enough that he could take on that contact.
He didn't run yesterday, right?
I don't think he ended up running.
I don't think he ran.
Yeah, so he'll probably run at his pro day. He's going to fly, by the way. Interesting story. I mean, he came here from Haiti when he was 9 years old, didn't speak a word of English. Now he won the Lott Trophy, right? The Lott Impact Trophy for being like that guy, that kind of leader and impact in the community. So I love Junior Colson, and I think what you have to realize with the college linebackers, him, Edrin Cooper from Texas A&M, and then Peyton Wilson from NC State.
Cooper looks like a safety, though, man.
And his guy is Fred Warner. And when we watch Fred Warner coming out of BYU, he played
like
the slot.
Safety. Yeah, I know.
It's
You're
what
right.
these guys are not asked to come downhill and take on contact like they used to. So you don't even know coming into the league. It's just so much adapting to that. So it's going to be hard to find those kind of thumpers. And then, you look at maybe a guy like Eichenberg from Ohio State. I think he could take on contact in the run. He'd be more in the later range like you're talking about.
Right.
So there's no first-round superstar linebacker, but I think a lot of these guys have starter or third linebacker potential.
Wilson, I think, has the frame to do it, though. If he
He's
can stay
6'4".
healthy, yeah, I think if he puts some weight on, I think
And
he has a
that's
chance
the question.
to do it.
When you hurt the shoulders at linebacker,
Right.
it gives you a little bit of a fear. And I hope for him because I really liked him, and I think he's had a long road to get there. And, he wins the Bicknarek and he wins the Buckus in the same year. No one had done that since 2012.
Yeah.
I mean, that's crazy. So if he could stay healthy, he probably would have went in the top 35 if he was healthy.
Real quick, final question. I don't think we've asked one person about tight ends yet, have we?
Well, we've talked about Bowers a little bit.
Bowers, yes, but nobody else.
I got a tight. Go ahead. I got a tight end after you do.
Sure. Late day 2, early day 3 tight end that you like.
Kate Stover. It's Kate Stover from Ohio State.
Well, he had a chip on his shoulder at the pole.
He's
the other
intense.
Day, huh? Oh, my
he's
gosh.
Intense. I think that was the most out of the sit-downs I did, I was on eggshells a little bit, in like a funny way.
He dropped an F-bomb at the podium. Yeah, he was the only guy I heard do the whole time.
He is a tough dude. This is a dude that grew up on a farm. In the offseason, he still goes back and farms. Like, that's his thing, hard work. He legitimately played linebacker for Ohio State. I think he had double-digit tackles in a Rose Bowl. And then they flipped him to tight end, and he's played tight end for 2 years. This dude is tough. He is focused. He is all business. I like his effort as a blocker. I really do.
Someone asked him why he wasn't a good enough blocker, and that's when the bad word came out.
Which is funny to me because I didn't see that on tape.
Neither did I. I'm with you.
I mean, people come here, they could ask whatever they want. I think Kate Stover's a good blocker. I think he's a good red zone weapon. You got to realize with the Ohio State tight ends is that they don't get the same volume as other guys because they play with superstars at wide receiver that get all the targets. So you're undervaluing that or underappreciating that. I really like Stover and think he's going to be the third tight end taken actually in this draft.
All right. One of my real sleepers here is Ben Sinnott.
Yeah.
I like him an awful lot. I love the versatility.
You want
I
to
love
put him
the
a fullback,
attitude.
don't you?
He could do it.
I want to see him do a bunch of stuff.
Yeah, he could do it.
Because his attitude today, when we were talking to him today, he was saying, you know what? All right, they started me out as more of a receiving guy. Then they told me I had to start doing some blocking, and that's fine. And play running back, play fullback.
Yeah.
This guy's ready to roll.
He is. He'll do anything asked of him. He had some pretty high grades over the summer when we start this process, and he was one of the main guys we watched at tight end. Can climb the ladder over defenders that catch the ball. I like the frame. I think he's somebody that can use – you talk about zone game. You want to get somebody on the move blocking. That's who I would think of in that as well. So you can motion him really from the backfield to inline to the slot. He can handle a lot of different roles. He's had a weird year because it felt like over summer the grades were so high. Nobody talked about him all season. Now it's kind of trickling back where he's on the radar again.
Connor, good stuff, my man.
Oh, appreciate
Find
it.
all the stuff, NBC Sports, the Stock Exchange podcast as well. Anything else?
No, we're good. Yeah,
okay.
And everything for NFL Draft will be at NBC or on the Stock Exchange pod.
Check it all out. Connor Rogers will be back with Matt Miller from ESPN right after this.
Giants fans, get loud and welcome your New York Football Giants.
Take your fandom to the next level with a season ticket membership.
And it's intercepted. Deontay Banks.
You will receive exclusive benefits like members-only events, game day experiences, and discounts on Giants merchandise at the team shop.
Sacked by Thibodeau, and the Giants have won.
To learn more about a New York Giants season ticket membership, visit giants.com/tickets.
1, 2, 3, Giants.
We got some cilantro, some onions, some carrots. Giving back to the community means a lot. Just to keep giving hope that, you just live in a situation, the situation doesn't define you.
So, I got you.
Thank y'all.
You're welcome.
Seriously. This is so nice of y'all.
Thank you.
Just little things like that just to keep encouraging guys.
Back here on Big Blue Kickoff Live, we are at the Indianapolis at the NFL Combine. John Schmeelk, Paul Dottino, joined by our good friend Matt Miller from ESPN. Matt, good to see you, man.
Likewise, we do this every year. I was trying to think how many years it's been. A lot.
It's been a lot.
A lot
yes.
of years.
And we always said, well, Matt, again, do a bigger dive as you get closer to the draft, like you always do every year. Top of the draft, Matt, and I've kind of opened most interviews with this, so I'll stick with it. Most blue chip players I've seen in the draft in years. I think you can combine the last few draft classes. You have more blue chip prospects in this class, and it's premium positions.
Right.
It's quarterback, it's receiver, it's offensive tackle. I mean, this thing's loaded at the top. It's a good year to be picking 6.
It really is. I mean, 3 quarterbacks, 3 wide receivers, 2 offensive tackles. I think you can throw in a defensive end and a corner in that group as well. So it is really deep, and as you mentioned, they're all premium positions. When you talk about how do you want to build a franchise, okay, quarterback, pass rusher, left tackle, wide receiver, corner. Those are where you want to go. The top 10 picks of this draft could just be those positions, and maybe even deeper. We might go 12 or 13 with just quarterbacks, receivers, tackles, and then a corner and a pass rusher.
Now, aside from Chicago, which we've all heard that Justin Fields could be trade bait as somebody tries to move up to the top, do you suspect that the overload at premium positions will force most of those teams to stay put, or to try to get an extra huge haul to move?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think, every franchise could be a little bit different. Here's where I would say, I think you come in and say, we're making that pick this year because of their blue chip positions, blue chip players. Also, you got to be smart and look ahead to next year. Next year's draft right now looks like it could be a little bit weaker. So I would rather have, normally if you're trading out of the top 10, it's for future draft picks, right? Those future draft picks next year might not be as valuable as they are this year because it's very unlikely that we're going to see 3 to 4 quarterbacks in the top 10 next year. Very unlikely we're going to see 3 elite wide receivers at the top, even though wide receiver is probably next year's strength again. And then the offensive tackles that we have this year. Very, very hard to find guys like Joe Alt and Olu Fashanu in any draft class. This year, there are 2 of them. So I think this year is going to be a little bit more valuable where we probably do see those teams stay pat.
Any chance one of those top 3 teams don't pick a quarterback and either trade out of it or don't pick a quarterback?
I think New England is the wild card because who knows, right? We don't know what to expect there. Elliott Wolf is running the personnel department. Obviously, his dad, Ron, helped build the Green Bay Packers. But he's been all over the NFL. He's really worked his way up through the ranks. And so it's hard to nail down what that philosophy might be. Also a first-time head coach in Gerard Mayo. So we don't really know what they're going to do. And I think what it comes down to is they need to love that quarterback.
There's only one for them. That's it. There's going to be one left. That's it.
So you got to love that guy. I assume it right now, if we had to bet right now, I would say it's Drake May. You got to love Drake May because if you don't, that's the one team, to your point, that could trade back into where you could get that huge bounty of draft picks. So if you don't love Drake May and you're saying, hey, we're comfortable moving back a couple spots, wherever that might be, 6, 8, 11, wherever that might be, then I think that is, at least for New England, because that roster is so poor right now. That's, I think, more intriguing. Washington, they've got playmakers. They've got some building blocks. They need the quarterback. Chicago, that's a good roster. This pick is not theirs. This is Carolina earning that number 1 pick.
And they pick again at 9.
Exactly. So
they're going to get one of the blue chip guys anyway.
Yeah, exactly.
Let me ask you about the situation involving a lot of guys who have had the 6th year because of COVID.
Yeah.
And guys who have moved to multiple programs who are now very high in the draft, and maybe because they've had more different experiences and because they've had more time in college, maybe they're more of a sure bet than what other players have been at this high level of the draft. Would you concur?
Yeah, I would, and I think it helps me do my job because I've seen you transfer to different programs and have to learn. So someone like Caleb Williams transfers, but he goes with his coach. So he didn't have to learn a new system, but he did have to learn new players, right? We see Jaden Daniels go from Arizona State to LSU. There's adversity there, and I love watching a quarterback have to battle some adversity. We got to see that with Jaden Daniels. With Bo Nix, you go to your dad's alma mater where he's a legend and you struggle. And a lot of people are writing the obituary on your career. You go to Oregon and put together 2 of the finest years of any quarterback in college football. Michael Penix Jr., 4 years at Indiana, every year ended in injury, season-ending injury. But you go to Washington, become a Heisman candidate. So it definitely helps me do my job. I think it helps NFL teams as well. The other side of that is NIL. We have young men in college now making real money. And it used to be, what would we say? I don't know how this guy's going to handle fame and money. You don't have to worry about that anymore. They've got it in college, so we can tell how you're going to handle it.
That's a good point. You mentioned the two offensive tackles, Joe Alt and Olu Fashanu. Coming into this year, I had Fashanu as my top offensive tackle. I thought the way he moved last year, I thought he was phenomenal. I think Joe Alt this year was better. And when I watched Fashanu, the pass pro, and I know there were some games where he let guys get into his chest and he got bull rushed.
Yeah, Ohio State.
Right.
We could just say Ohio State, yeah.
But I think that's more hands. Like, if he gets his hands inside, they're so long, no one's going to get into his chest. I think that's going to be fine. The thing that bothered me with Fashanu, in the run game, he's on the ground a lot. He falls.
Yeah.
Which, for a guy that's so graceful, moving backwards in pass protection.
Little surprising, right?
To fall in the run game, to me, is odd. So I do have Alt ahead of Fashanu. How do you think NFL teams look at Olu? How do you look at him now, given the really good pass pro, but then the run game stuff, even not just his strength, but some of the technique stuff with the balance is a real issue.
Yeah, and I think that's a good point about it. So I have it Alt, then Olu, and Talise Fuaga from Oregon State is right there as well. But he's a right tackle, so a little bit different. I think with Fashanu, it's a matter of, can you coach that up? And I know he's working with Duke Manyweather in the pre-draft process, which gives me some, that helps. I feel more confident about where a guy's going to develop because they're working with Duke. And, I think he's worked to get stronger, which I think is going to help have more of that solid, sturdy, powerful base. But then, the agility is there. I think it's just unlocking it, and I would rather bet on a guy who has that agility, and you're thinking, can I coach it up? But as we were talking about earlier, it's not just quarterbacks where you want that experience. It's offensive tackles as well. And you want guys who are coming out of, the Penn States, the Notre Dames, the Alabamas, the Georgias, because they're running things that you actually do in the NFL instead of just, weak side, he's just going to cut block, or he's just, going to shadow block because we're throwing a bubble screen over here. Right. So I think that also helps. It's
like real pass sets.
You've actually seen these guys do it, and that gives you some comfort.
It seems to me that every year when we sit here and we talk, we're always addressing at least one or two pass rushers in the top 10. Not so much this year.
Yeah.
Whether it's Turner or Verse or Latu, they seem to be the top three pass rushers here on the edge. If Latu had not had his injury history, would he have been a top 10?
So I don't think so, just because of he's not an explosive athlete. He's a very good football player.
Great technician.
Yeah, he's ready to go. He looks like he's played in the NFL for 5 years already because he's so good with his hands. He sets things up so well. But I think that lack of twitch and explosion in his game, I had a chance to talk to him at the Senior Bowl. He's a tall, linear kid. He's not going to have that, I think, great dip and bend. It's just not who he is athletically. As you said, he's a great technician. I think he could be a 10-sack guy in the NFL, but that probably keeps him out of the top 10.
Second round, who do you like out of that next group of wide receivers outside that top three that maybe if the Giants don't go wide receiver in the first round, they decide to maybe go in the second round? To me, that's a real big chef's choice type of situation, right? There's a lot of different guys with different flavors you might like. Who do you like in that next group of wideouts that might get to round two?
Yeah, that might, and I don't want to say they're round two players because I think they could go late first, but Adonai Mitchell from Texas, and then his teammate, Xavier Worthy. They're both fantastic, and sometimes I see mock drafts from my colleagues, and I'm like, guys, what are we doing on these two? Have we watched them play? Worthy's going to run in the high 4.2s, low 4.3s. He has vertical stretchability. He was a punt returner. He cleaned up some of the drop issues that he had that 2022 season. And then A.D. Mitchell comes into Texas from Georgia, 6'4". He's running a 4.35 last week, hand-timed. And you see it on tape. That's the thing about these guys. They're not just fast. Okay, well, straight line fast. You can see it on tape with both players. So I see mock drafts, and Kuiper's mock draft that came out today, Worthy was at 32, no A.D. Mitchell. And so if that's the way the wind's blowing in the NFL, someone's going to get a steal.
What do you think about what the Giants should do with the offensive line? Some people are saying they got to grab one at 6. We know who the top guys are.
Yeah.
But if they don't do that, do you really believe that if there are 6 or 7 first-round offensive linemen, can they get somebody good enough, one of their 2 second-round picks, that can push for a starting job right away?
I think so. I mean, we could be talking about centers. Jackson Powers Johnson from Oregon.
Well, they got JMS. I don't think they're going to do that.
Yeah, so guard
he can play guard,
too. He can play guard. He's going to play guard. I love Cooper Beebe from Kansas State. Fantastic athlete. Powerful. Plays with enough of a mean streak, a controlled mean streak. So I do think with one of those second-round picks, you could be looking at a guard who could come in and be a starter. I'm still an Evan Neal fan. I want to see him get healthy.
Please preach, because we have a lot of folks who are not. So go ahead.
I loved Evan Neal coming out. I remember talking about him with you guys, and I loved Evan Neal. Let's just give him a chance. Everybody wanted to write Andrew Thomas off his rookie year as well. Look at the rebound that he has made. Christian Darrisaw in Minnesota. People wanted to write him off early. We got to give these guys time to develop. And I think for Evan, you got to give him time to develop, playing right tackle,
and
but also
too.
Get healthy.
He's been hurt.
Getting healthy is the biggest thing for him.
Yeah, no question about it. Giants might be in need for a running back. We might not see a running back picked into the third round this year.
Don't take one of 6. Yeah, don't do that.
Right? No, obviously, and I wouldn't even pick one in the second round. There's so many of these guys, to be honest with you. I think you can wait till the third round and you're going to be fine. But, boy, you got a bunch of guys that are, like, really close on your board when you get to that spot. Who are the running backs you like from that group?
I have 6 running backs with a third-round grade. I have 8 with a fourth-round grade.
There you go.
So that's where they're going to come off the board. So all of them, I think, are in that range. Jonathan Brooks from Texas coming off a November ACL injury. That could push him to the third round. I'm in love with Trey Benson from Florida State. 223 pounds, can catch the ball out of the backfield. Braylon Allen is a little bit of a throwback coming out of Wisconsin. He's going to be 240 pounds. Downhill runner with runaway speed, though. So I like both those guys. And I'll tell you one more name. Jalen Wright from Tennessee is going to put a show on this week. And I think he is somebody that even as a third, maybe fourth-round pick, could be a starting NFL running back. Like, he's your RB1 frontline guy.
All right, we've heard that the corners are pretty deep. You can get slots and you can get boundaries. If you had your druthers in, let's say, the third or fourth round, do you have to go slot there? Will the boundaries be all gone?
Yeah, like the ones that you feel great about playing early are probably going to be gone at that point, unless we see something surprising. A guy like Kalen King, who you talk about preseason first-round grade at Penn State.
Yeah, I love this 2022 tape.
Now it's looking like maybe third or fourth round, and he's someone who has played out on the boundary. But I think you're getting into like Andrew Phillips at Kentucky, really good inside player. Yeah. Jarvis Brownlee, Louisville, really good inside player. Jerry Jones, Florida State, really good inside player. So I think we are seeing this year, especially where all these first-round guys are all boundary guys, and they can all run. They're all big. So there is a little bit of a tier system this year at corner.
All right, final 2 quick before we say goodbye here. 1, corner in the second round. The Giants have 2 picks there. They might have a big-time need there, assuming that, the Quinion Mitchells are gone. Both Alabama guys are going to be gone. I would think Kool-Aid McKinstry is going to be gone by then.
That's
but it might be a little bit tighter. Who else do you like? Kamari Lassiter? What are the guys do you like maybe as a second-round
I say
corner?
Kamari Lassiter. That's about his range. I think Nate Wiggins from Clemson is really interesting because the tape, to me, doesn't match the athletic profile we're going to see this week.
I love Wiggins.
So we'll see. I mean, he could go top 20. He might run a 4.25 in a couple days, and he goes top 20. But he's a player I know the league is split on as well because you don't always see the consistency. You don't always see the toughness. So he's a player that we all think like, oh, this guy might go top 20. It might be top 40 when it's all said and done. So Lassiter from Georgia is very much in that mix. I think that's perfect range for him.
All right, final question. Giants at 6. If I put the GM hat on Matt Miller, what are you thinking?
If a quarterback's there, that's where I'm going. I think resetting that is something that's important for the franchise.
And when you say a quarterback, you mean one of the top 3.
So Caleb Williams won't be there.
Yes,
Jaden Daniels or Drake May, if they're there at 6, I would draft one of those players. Assuming that won't be the case, Rome Odunze would be my home run pick for the Giants.
Thank you.
I think you've got speed with Jalen Hyatt, who I loved. You've got speed with Wan'Dale Robinson. How about a 6'3", 250-pound bully?
I'm salivating, Matt. Right? In case you can't see it, I'm salivating. Can you get me a napkin, somebody, please?
Yeah, Rome Odunze, and then with those round 2 picks, Bo Nix is there in round 2. I'm all in. And then we could get a guard with the next one. Like
you and I need to have lunch because we are so much on the same page. Because I just wanted to get a little appendix here. If the Giants were to draft a prospect for the future at quarterback and bypass the first round and maybe even the second, could Rattler be there?
Rattler in the third round. Rattler
good with
third
me on
round
that?
is definitely his range.
We think so much alike, man.
It's wild.
It really
we
is.
will take a quick timeout, get the cleanup crew here for Dottino, and we'll have more Big Blue Kickoff Live. We thank you, Matt Miller from ESPN. You check out ESPN coverage of the draft all week long of the NFL Combine, so make sure you check that out. We'll be right back after this.
Hey, how are you? Hi. I'm Kayvon. Nice to meet you.
For me, it's just a blessing to always be that impact for somebody else. I always say try to be somebody to somebody. So when I go, I want my feet and my hands to move just as fast, right? It's been great getting to learn a lot, getting to meet a lot of kids. It kind of reminds you of where you used to be, and it reminds you of the impact that people have in your life. There you go. I think we had a tremendous impact on them, just being able to bring them a smile on the day and be able to, really interact with them and get to know them. Maybe one more. Hey. Really getting to step back and enjoy the moment.
Most used emoji is either the laughing emoji or the crying emoji that I use when I'm laughing even extra harder. Something about me not a lot of people know would probably be that I'm a black belt. My favorite follow on social media is Rod Wave. I feel like I'm a huge Rod Wave fan. He's from around my hometown, so gotta follow him and see what he does, what music he drops. My biggest pet peeve, man, I would say when people chew and they're talking when they're chewing.
This is fantastic. Makes your taste buds come alive.
And if they're dragging their feet when they walk, my parents always instilled in me not to do that. So I'll probably say those two things.
Back here on Big Blue Kickoff Live, presented by Cadillac, the official luxury vehicle of the New York Football Giants. Hey, Giant fans, score a taste touchdown with Hellmann's, the official mayonnaise of the New York Giants. Joining us, friend of the program, he is the director of the Reese's Senior Bowl. He is the one and only Jim Nagy. Jim, how are you?
Good to see you guys.
You too.
Yeah, we had a chance to catch up after the Senior Bowl. You already had one of your guys, I think, was pretty much the star of the linebacker show yesterday with Peyton Wilson just lighting things up. Your reaction to the first day of workouts and some of the stuff that your guys from the Senior Bowl did?
Yeah, some really impressive stuff yesterday. Peyton ran. I talked to one team, they had him 4.41. I think whatever it was, 4.43 official.
And he's not one of these 225-pound linebackers either. He's a bigger dude.
Yeah, he's a 6'3", 240-pound guy. And and not to derail this thing into the Peyton Wilson show, but
I asked you about it. It's my fault.
He plays so dang hard too. Some guys, when you've got instincts and then motor and you run low 4.4s, man, you're going to make a ton of plays. Everyone knows the thing with Peyton is going to be the medical, so hopefully that comes out great. But he's a great football player. And Braden Fisk, the defensive tackle, who really kind of started things off in Mobile, had a monster week for us. First player in Senior Bowl history to be traded, not really traded. So well, it was on the morning of the, I get a text in the morning of the game at 6:15 from one of the, the national team's D-line coach. He's like, Jim, we only got 3 inside guys. I'm like, all right, give me a minute. And I ran to the office. I'm looking at the depth chart. And really the reason I picked Braden, nothing to do with talent, I knew he would do it. I knew he would flop teams, looking at how the guys were wired. Not casting any judgment on those other guys, but I knew Braden Fisk if I called him. So I'm like, hey, buddy, meet me by the escalators in 20 minutes. And he came walking out, and the 2 D-line coaches were standing there with me. And I said, I'm like, you really make some history? And he kind of looks at me. I'm like, dude, you're about to be a legend. I'm like, we're going to flip teams. He's like, I'm getting traded. I'm like, no, it's not trade. You're just getting moved. There's nothing going back in return for you. So it's not really a trade.
He had a good day here, by the way.
He ran whatever he ran, 4.75, 4.7. He was fastest D lineman, jumped high. The shuttle times were ridiculous. And
if you watch him on tape, that shouldn't have been a surprise to anybody.
No. And again, that's the thing about the combine. Sometimes these guys pop numbers, and it makes you go back to the tape, and you're like, I still don't see it. But, yeah, if you didn't see the get-off quickness, from you knew he was going to do. But more so than all the times, and you can put your stopwatch down, and if you just watch the drills, how does it look? And Braden Fisk looked, to me, he looked different. He and Byron Murphy probably at the defensive tackle spot. Mm-hmm. Those 2 guys look different than the rest of the group.
Yeah, there's no question at all. The next couple of days, as they continue to do what they're doing out here, are there 2 or 3 or even 4 guys that you had at the Reese's Senior Bowl who you could not wait to get here because you think they're really gonna drop jaws?
Yeah, well, one guy that I hope, again, I got my fingers crossed a little bit. We did a Senior Bowl recap show on the NFL Network the other day, and Daniel Jeremiah had been trumpeting Devontae Walker from North Carolina leading into our game.
I remember.
And Tez got deep all week, man. He got open. The speed showed up. I think he was the 2nd fastest player at the game on the zebra technology stuff that the Giants use.
He had trouble finishing, but boy, he was open all week.
So I want to see him catch the ball well down there. I hope that, I felt like it snowballed on him a little bit.
Yeah, I think so too.
During our week, but No, I mean, God, just off the top of my head, some of these guys, I mean, the receivers, like I'd love to – we had a good receiver week. The other day, someone in the local media asked me about the receiver group, and we had 7 go in the top 100 last year, and I rattled off 7 off the top of my head that I think could go in the second round, not just top 100. I mean, so I'd love to see how Ricky Pearsall from Florida runs. I would love to see how Roman Wilson runs. I think that both those guys could be in the 4.3s.
Well, if Pearsall goes in the 4.3s, the way he catches the ball,
I think he could.
Whew.
Yeah, I think he could. Just talking to his agents again. Though it's agents, they all think they're guys. but no, I'm excited to see all these guys, and I'm excited to see some of the guys throw. I'm excited to see J.J. McCarthy throw. JJ's a guy that I have not seen throw the ball live. Like I go to a lot of camps in the summer, the Manning camp and things like that, and I've never seen JJ throw in person, so I'm excited to see that.
As you take on a different role in this process, you had to watch more players this year because they got opened up to not just seniors for the recent Senior Bowl.
Yep.
So as you show up here, is this a little bit different now for you? We have a feel for more of these guys because you had to scout them all as potential invites to the game?
Yeah, absolutely. In years past, once we got done with our game, I would watch some of the top juniors so I could come here and talk about them. But no, I've got a much better working knowledge of those guys because we did. Everyone asked because it didn't get announced until the first week in November. The league kind of dropped it.
But you knew, though, right?
But they gave us a heads up in August that this might be coming down the track. So we had our scouts watching all the juniors. We built the board this year with all the juniors on it. So once they made it, it didn't catch us off guard. We just stayed true to what we had. But no, so I should know some of these guys better.
You had a couple of quarterbacks I want to ask you about because they seem to be in that second cluster of QBs in terms of a Rattler and Nix, right?
Yep.
Now, the people who seem to be down on Nix think more about his Auburn days than his Oregon days. And the people who are down on Rattler say, well, he's maybe too small and he's developed, but he's older and whatever else. Where is the upside to both of these guys from your perspective?
Well, I'll say this. Bo is a very different player. If you only know one or the other, if you only know the Auburn Bo Nix or you only know the Oregon Bo Nix, they're really different guys.
Right.
I think it's what has gotten lost with people that have focused on Bo the last 2 years in Eugene, Oregon. He has played so well within the structure of what they do. He's done so much of his work from the pocket. But then when you go back to Auburn, he's running around like a chicken with his head cut off, just making plays, and he looks like a guy that, just very creative and ad-lib. And so Bo has that in his skill set. Even though we haven't seen it for a couple of years, he definitely has that. Everyone the emphasis right now is getting guys that can create. He can create. And then with Spencer Rattler, I think, again, he was so hyped coming out of high school. He's one of those guys that we all kind of knew about. He was, he had the Netflix documentary and all that. He was a 5-star kid, Oklahoma, big program, loses his job to Caleb Williams. So there's been a lot of stuff around Spencer for a long time. I think he's grown up a lot. And I didn't know the younger version of him. You hear the stories about – this is back when I was scouting. I think Spencer was a freshman when I took this job. So you heard a lot of scuttlebutt among the scouts on the road, like, hey, man, did you see that Netflix thing? he didn't come across very well on that. But talking to Shane Beamer and the people at South Carolina, man, he's grown up. It's one of those things, like, you gotta give these guys an opportunity to change, right? Like, they're still young men. I mean, they're so he's changed a lot. He's not the biggest guy, but he's got a big arm. He showed that off in Mobile, had a great week. I hope that he can continue to push because I think coming into the Senior Bowl, a lot of people were like 3rd, 4th round on Spencer, and I think it's trending upward from there right now.
Now, I have a generic question, not about any player in particular, but I wonder, I'm getting the sense from being here all week that this draftee class is a lot more mature as a whole than ones we've seen in the past. And I wonder if that has to do with guys having multiple transfers and they have to grow up and learn from this and they get exposed to more. I'm also wondering if with the COVID year, guys who stayed that extra year and played more and they grew as players and as people.
For sure. You're seeing older guys right now, and again, the league has adjusted to that. It used to be, if you were going to be a 24-year-old rookie, that made teams, that was a little bit of a red flag. But I think teams have adjusted because these guys are, they're all taking care of themselves better. They do a much better job in the offseason. They're playing longer into their careers. When we were kids, if you were a quarterback and you were, north of 30 years old, you were on the downside. Now these quarterbacks are all playing until they're 40 years old. It's not just Tom Brady. So no, I would think more mature for sure. We see that. And then the NIL piece, because they're handling their money. and they're having to show up to appearances. Like, they're their own managers right now. And the guys that don't handle that part of it well, frankly, don't end up here. They don't end up at the Senior Bowl. Like, they shoot themselves in the foot. So it's I get asked this all the time. How is NIL in all the transfer portal and all that impacted scouting? It's made it easier. These teams can now figure out, the question has always been, what are these guys going to do with more time on their hands and more money in their pocket? Well, now we know what they're doing with the money in their pocket, So no, it's cleaned it up a little bit.
Less margin for error.
Yeah, absolutely.
And, I think the extra years help the quarterback evaluation process. Like, I don't think it's a minus that these guys are 24 years old. Quarterback is such – I'm not telling you anything you don't know. Quarterback is such a hard position to scout.
Yeah.
And projecting what this guy is going to do in this collegiate system versus what he's going to do when he could be asked to do almost a completely different job in the NFL in a pro system, right? But now you get these guys in multiple systems with multiple coaches for multiple years. The more reps you get, the better. I think it makes evaluating the quarterback position a little bit easier, something that even with that is still almost impossible.
No doubt. There's no doubt. I mean, you look at the Senior Bowl. The only true four-year guy we had was Michael Pratt from Tulane. I mean, Sam Hartman, there was a question on ESPN the other day. They did a trivia question. Who's thrown the most touchdown passes in this draft class? It was Sam Hartman. He threw like 130-some touchdowns. And just your question, about the age and the quarterback thing, I'll just bring it back to Brock Purdy. I mean, I think us included, I didn't invite Brock Purdy to the Senior Bowl, so I was like the 31 other teams that passed on him. Like, why did we miss on Purdy? Why did we not invite Purdy? Mm-hmm. And you go back, that dude played like he was a 4-year starter at Iowa State or 5-year starter. He played a ton of football. So, for sure, there's something to it.
Remember when Wanky came out, everybody was looking at him like he was Methuselah.
That's right. That's right.
Absolutely. We had this discussion with a bunch of different guys, Jim. Neighbors of Dunzier is a choice that maybe the Giants will be facing in round one, other teams too. And it brings you to the larger, what traits are most important for the wide receiver position? Is it the bigger more of a contested catch type of length guy, or is it the smaller separation type of guy? Where do you land on that?
Well, I love guys that can create space and then create with the ball in their hands. The thing with both these guys is they both are really good with their ball in their hands. I mean, Rome, for a guy that big, and Keon Coleman's kind of in the same vein too for Florida State, you don't usually see big guys as punt returners. Mm-hmm. Dunzi's a good punt returner. Like, you don't see many guys with that body type. You should have little shorter guys that can shake people and got lateral quickness. Like, Dunzi's back there, he can do that. So if that's the decision that the Giants have to make, if that's the two guys they're staring at,
can't go wrong, right?
You can't really go wrong. They're both playmakers,
Mm-hmm.
Neighbors is a little more inside, like going through all his tape. Like, he makes a lot of plays out of the slot where he's manned up on safeties. Like, if you're going to knock the tape a little bit.
Slot fade master. Loves the slot fade.
Whereas Dunzi's more outside. But, again, they're both explosive. They both can create space. They get open at the top of a route, and they're good with the ball in their hands. So I know the Giants need that. They've needed it for a while. To me, it would be a significant upgrade with either of those guys in that offense.
Great stuff. Final thing from me, Jim. Pass rushers, usually when you get a good one, boy, they're going to be up there in the top 5. But not really this year, right? I mean,
because of all the other positions.
Right. And so many other good spots. It's really weird for me to be involved in a combine where pass rushers are not grabbing headlines.
Like last year, Dallas Turner is a top 10 pick. Like, he just is.
But not now.
Right. That's because the other positions are all so good.
Yeah. I mean, look at Will Anderson, right? So Will Anderson's Rookie of the Year this year for the Houston Texans. Great football player. Taking nothing away from Will. But, like, when you watch Will last year, the Alabama tape, you couldn't help but notice Dallas Turner. Mm-hmm. And just look at how he tested yesterday. A far superior athlete to Will Anderson. I'm not saying he's a better football player, but, the pass rush upside because of the explosiveness and the bendability, because he's a bendier guy. I mean, he probably would have been a top 10 pick. And look at, like, Latu from UCLA. This dude is such an accomplished pass rusher.
Technician.
But because of the medical thing, like, he could slide into the late teens, and you could be staring at a guy that might get double-digit sacks as a rookie just because he's so ready to do it. So, you're right. I mean, this pass rush crew, they're going to slip, and so there's going to be a couple teams really benefit.
Jim, tell the folks anything you want them to know about the Senior Bowl. I know you guys are trying to make this a 365-day operation, not just like 1 week in January.
Yeah, we can't. We can't just show up and be like, hey, look at us for January. No, I would encourage fans, like, if you really want to be immersed in the NFL culture for a week in a relaxed setting, you guys have been. It's just a great week.
Yeah.
And it sounds, I'm in the chair now, so it sounds like I'm selling it. But I've thought that for 25 years I've been coming to Mobile. Like it is so cool. You can go to practice. There's a great vibe there. You can, from here to that table over there, from the one-on-one drills, and you get to learn these guys through the process. If you really love the draft process, see them in Mobile. Then when you're watching the combine this week, you know who Braden Fisk is because you just saw him.
Mm-hmm.
So it's really a great week. It's inexpensive. It's a cheap trip. Love to have everyone come down to Mobile and be a part of it.
And you and Senior Bowl on Twitter, where can they find you?
Yeah, at Twitter. We have Instagram, but all the our breaking news and all the stuff I post is on Twitter, and so it's at Senior Bowl and at Jim Nagy _SB.
All right.
Yeah.
Jim,
Great
good stuff,
stuff,
my man.
Thanks,
Enjoy
guys.
the rest of the time in Indy.
Yeah,
Jim
good to
Nagy
see
for
you.
the Senior Bowl. One more segment of Big Blue Kickoff Live from the Combine, presented by Cadillac when we return.
It's a thread.
A love affair. I fell in love with the Giants. I saw LT run the touchdown battle when they played the Detroit Lions.
Pass down. Phil Simms was my dad's guy.
From generation.
Eli was my guy. To generation.
We are
The New York Giants.
My most used emoji is laughing emoji. My all-time favorite character of Marvel is the Black Panther. I feel like being the first black character. Me being able to see that at this phase of my life, I like to support him. One thing about me that a lot of people don't know is that I'm 20 years old.
You're young. You're so young.
My biggest pet peeve is rushing. Rushing around, scrabbling around, unorganized.
Rush! You want to rush!
Back here on Big Blue Kickoff Live, presented by Cadillac, the official luxury vehicle of the New York Football Giants. Our final segment from our 4 live shows here at the NFL Combine in Indianapolis. Schmeelk Dottino, joined now by a new member of the Big Blue Kickoff Live family, Ryan Fowler. He used to cover the Commanders. You saw him on a couple of Giant Huddle podcasts when he did that. Now he covers both college football and the NFL for Bleacher Report. Ryan, how are you?
I'm good. I appreciate you guys having me on.
No, thanks for coming on, man. And you were over there all last 4 or 5 days, listening to all these prospects. Let's focus on today because today was the fun stuff. This was quarterbacks and wide receivers. What struck you the most listening to these guys at the podium today?
Yeah, I think when you look at these guys speak, I think, look, you can watch the film for years, whether they're Drake May at North Carolina or Michael Penix going from Indiana to Washington. I think when you see these guys stand up there and speak as young men that are going to go into a locker room and be asked to lead not 19, 20, 21-year-olds, grown men with families. And that's what I think separates these young men speaking, is just sitting there and listening to these guys and really getting a chance to be that GM or be inside that draft room a little bit and really get to know these guys and how they're going to speak to guys. Because, look, you can come into an NFL locker room, doesn't matter who you are. It doesn't matter if you're Jaden Daniels who won the Heisman or Caleb Williams, where a lot of these guys obviously follow college ball. You're going to have to sell yourself to an NFL locker room, not just as a young man, but obviously on the field as well. So I really enjoyed J.J. McCarthy today. I thought he carried himself extremely well.
Might as well be just Captain America. I thought he was going to have a shield behind there.
Right.
Like he is just like if you built like what a quarterback should say in a lab, that's J.J. McCarthy.
Yeah, J.J. is extremely impressive. I mean, even Blake Corum, his teammate obviously at Michigan,
he was great too.
Extremely high of him, which is obviously good to hear. All the guys are going to talk well about their teammates, but J.J. McCarthy, look, is just the way he carries himself, the way he leads. Obviously, I do expect him to go inside the top 10, 11 picks in this draft. I think he's excellent. I think he's underrated in this class. For me, he is QB4 in this class. I think Jaden Daniels, obviously, Drake May, and Caleb Williams, that's all the attention, but it's really that next tier where those guys are going to go. And I think J.J. McCarthy, if he falls, let's say Justin Fields does not go to Atlanta, that offense with Zach Robinson, where that offense preaches efficiency with the playmakers they have there, and they're going to add some guys possibly in this draft to pair with Drake London on the outside. I love that fit in Atlanta. I think J.J. McCarthy, I would love to see him in Atlanta. And NFC South Division guys, that's wide open at this point in
And
time.
they wouldn't have to move to get him out.
Absolutely.
They could probably sit and pick at 8 for
I
him.
think it's interesting when you were talking about the podium, because every year when we come out here, I find myself at the end of the podium sessions writing down 2 or 3 guys and say they won the podium. All week, I've been writing polished, poised, professional on almost every guy I talk to. It is amazing to me. I used the word mature to Jim Nagy earlier at how these guys really seem to get it. They seem to have all their things together, and it's across the board at all the different positions, not just the quarterbacks.
And here's the thing, too, Paul, is that, look, we're in a different day and age now where these guys are getting media training from when they're in high school all the way through college now, where way back when this Combine was different, even just a few years ago, guys from smaller schools, they would come up here and look like, these bright lights in their eyes. It would kind of showcase themselves in sometimes a bad light. Guys from all different levels of school, even a guy like Dylan Laub from New Hampshire, who hasn't had a ton of cameras on him at all. Not like Alabama.
True.
The guy speaks extremely well, and I'm right there with you. Every single guy, and I'm sure we're going to see it tomorrow when the big O linemen step up and they speak. Everyone has been extremely polished, as you mentioned, and speaks so well, not just of describing their own game, their teammates, and what they're also going to offer as a young man in an NFL locker room.
Other things that jumped out to me, Jaden Daniels is very slender.
Yes.
I mentioned that with Nate Wiggins the other day. I joked that he's like a cartoon where if he turns sideways, he disappears. And Jaden Daniels isn't quite that, but he is slender. We'll see I don't think the weigh-in has happened for it yet. We'll see when that happens and how he weighs in. From the wide receiver group, I thought Jalen McMillan was really impressive, talking about the art of playing wide receiver. I don't think Marvin Harrison Jr. ever came out today.
He did not.
Correct?
No.
I did not see him. I didn't think he did either. I thought A.D. Mitchell and Troy Franklin were very polished. Ladd McConkey was good as you would expect. Keon Coleman I thought was pretty good.
Actually,
it's just such a mix of different – and I like looking at the body types for these guys. I think for the receivers especially, you want a slot? Ladd McConkey, Roman Wilson. You want big guys outside. Odunze, Keon Coleman.
How about the thickness of Leggett?
Yeah, or the thickness of Leggett, thickness of Malachi Corley, same thing.
Yes.
There is wide receivers for everybody in this class.
It really is amazing, this class. And I even look at the Giants, where, look, I know you could say it really is the lollipop guild on the outside with the guys like Wan'Dale Robinson and Darius Slayton of the world. And look,
and even Hyatt, right?
And Jalen Hyatt is not the biggest guy in the world, and everybody wants this X receiver. Is it going to be a Malik Neighbors at 6? Is Rome Odunze going to be there? But when you look at day 2, and you mentioned a guy like Roman Wilson that plays much bigger than his frame, I know he's not the biggest guy in the world, but that day 2 bucket of Roman, Ladd McConkey, guys even like Malachi Corley, as you get into that 50, 60 range, guys that are not just going to be asked to threaten vertically every single time, but win at each level. And also, and Roman talked about it today, and he's talked about it in the conversations I've had with him in this pre-draft process, is doing the dirty work on the outside, not being afraid to block.
And you have to at Michigan or you're not playing, dude.
Absolutely right. Absolutely. Doing the little things correctly away from being a dynamic receiver that a guy like Roman Wilson, Ladd McConkey are, and specifically in this Giants offense, where I just feel like they need guys that can not just be receivers and separate for whoever is under center moving forward, the New York Giants, not just in 2024, but also guys that can be further extensions of the run game as well and diversify this Giants playbook under Mike Kafka.
Yeah, I find that, we talk about corners and receivers. Well, really in today's specialization, you're talking about slots and nickels. You're talking about boundary receivers, And it seems to me that there's a wide variety of every flavor you want here. And that doesn't happen very often in the Combine. Usually there's a bunch of slots. There are not many boundaries. But we see them across the board in this draft.
Yeah, and I think it even talks about how the college game has evolved to where you're seeing a lot of the similar stuff into the NFL game. Now, even on the defensive side of the ball, where just a few years ago we talked about how hard it was to project guys out of the Big 12 in those 3-3-5 stacks. You're seeing that at the NFL now level as well, where there's outside of Baltimore and San Francisco, you're not seeing 2 linebackers in the middle of the field anymore. You're seeing teams get lighter, and sometimes there's guys that want to add some bigger beef in the middle. However, when you have this wide receiver group and you want to diversify a playbook, not just east-west before the snap, like we've seen at the college level from teams like Tennessee under Josh Heupel and Washington and Kalen DeBoer, but now you're getting to the pro level to then expand north-south post-snap, and you have a quarterback that can maneuver with his legs.
Right.
You're forcing every single defensive guy to cover every blade of grass, and I think that's what makes football in general just so darn fun to watch at the end of the day, because look, points matter. We all love points. Defense wins championships. We get that, but there is a flavor for everybody, and I think for every scouting staff in football that does their due diligence on guys, not just round 1, round 2, but where you really win championships and NFC East titles for the Giants is going to be that later portion of day 2 and early portion of day 3, and especially in this wide receiver bucket.
I like talking to someone like you who doesn't just cover college football for the draft. You just cover college football, right? Who are some of the guys that you watch during the year that you think are really good players that Now that all us NFL guys are into the mix and we're talking about these guys,
Yeah.
and you're like, why are they talking about this dude more? He's a really good college football player.
I think, one pops to mind, and that's Braylon Trice, the edge rusher from Washington.
Oh, wow.
And the reason why I say that is because he has a little bit of a throwback build to him where, look, he weighed in yesterday lighter so we could run lighter, is what I was told by his reps, but he played at 255, 60, 65 pounds at Washington, and he has that little bit of a power-laden game where he wants to win with his hands, and everybody wants that Dallas Turner 235 type of rusher that's twitched up, that can threaten each shoulder, and then win with power, and that's fine. But I think about the Ryan Kerrigans of the world, and I think about how really the industry talked about George Karlaftis coming out of Purdue.
That's a good one.
And he's had an excellent start to his career in Kansas City, where he's not the most athletic guy in the world, but he is a technician, and you can win with power in the points of your game.
Even like a Trey Hendrickson, another
Absolutely.
guy, right? Similar type.
Yes.
You mentioned earlier, when you were talking about McCarthy, you had him higher than anybody I've talked to all week.
Yeah.
You're really, really high on him.
Yes.
I wonder, where were you earlier in the season, or has this become a late bloom for you with him?
Yeah, so I think it's going to be – all these guys are like a projection at this point.
Of
because
course.
It's tough to evaluate these guys, what they do at the college level, projecting to an NFL offense, and really their correlating surroundings. And really you look at this Michigan offense because they're a throwback offense. They want to line up, condense formations, and get after people. And really – absolutely. And J.J. McCarthy wants to sit back, put that back foot in the ground, really a bucket step. You're not going to see a lot of 7-step drops from J.J. McCarthy, long progressions over the middle of the field. Roman Wilson, Cornelius Johnson, or Colston Loveland or A.J. Barner. That's the Michigan offense. But when you project a skill set, and that's why I really love the fit at 8, and really when I look at J.J. and say, look, 2-3 years down the line, this is a young man that's a leader. This is a young man that has a skill set that will translate well. I think he's efficient where the shallow to intermediate areas, he's excellent. I know we talk about Michael Penix in the deep ball. We talk about Jaden Daniels sitting back and throwing it to Malik Neighbors and Brian Thomas, which was really nice. But even for me, for Michael Penix, he has a middle round 2 grade for me. I have a lot of questions with Michael Penix heading into this draft. But J.J. McCarthy, I think, is a special young man, a special athlete, and I think he's someone that can come to an NFL offense and lead right away as a young man under center.
See, the reason I brought that up, because it bothered me from the moment you said it, because no one has been saying that the Giants could even consider him at 6 because, he's got to be down further than that. He's got to be 10, 12, maybe 15.
Yeah.
When you said what you said, I'm like, well, if the Giants think he's the 8th player on the board, then 6 isn't that far a reach.
Yeah, and look, I will never flack an organization for going to get your guy. If that is your guy, then get him. And I would look at J.J. McCarthy under the bright lights of New York. I don't think that's a scenario to where I think he falls away from the lights. Like similarly what we saw, unfortunately, with the whole Zach Wilson experiment in New York and with the Jets. But J.J. McCarthy, I think, is someone, obviously, these last few weeks we've heard a lot about continuing to rise on boards. But when you just look at the skill set that he has as a dual threat guy and just someone that wins above the neck before he ever wins below the neck, that's someone I think that skill set's going to translate.
Ryan, final question. We'll wrap up with the biggest story of the week. How do you have the top 3 quarterbacks stacked?
Yeah, it's going to be Caleb, Drake May, and Jaden Daniels.
Do you have May ahead of Daniels?
I
Why?
do.
So do I, by the way. I'm just curious what your reason is.
Yeah, I do. And I'll start with Jaden Daniels. For me, well, let's start with this. We got to stop with the Lamar Jackson comparisons for Jaden Daniels. It's unfortunate that we always compare players to the superstars of the league. That's a 2-time MVP, and I know a lot of people like to compare it as a runner. Jaden Daniels as a runner takes away angles. A lot what Robert Griffin III did.
He's
out of
linear.
Baylor. Absolutely.
He's not as elusive as Lamar is. He's more of a straight-ahead guy.
Now, if we
I
line
agree with
Jaden
you.
Daniels, and Lamar Jackson had him race, Jaden Daniels would win that race. But if you put cones and had him go around the cones, Lamar Jackson would beat Jaden Daniels, and I wouldn't think it would be close. So in that offense as well, and I talked about it earlier, it was really nice to trust Brian Thomas and Malik to sit back there and let them know they're going to separate
Why
and throw
not?
deep. Absolutely, and that's fine. That's fine. But over the middle of the field, shallow, intermediate areas, when things condense, things get tight, guys around his feet. Also, we talked about Anthony Richardson last year, a big physical guy. Will he be able to take care of his body? Jaden Daniels does not look like Anthony Richardson.
No,
coming out of
he
Florida.
does
And
not.
we know that guys on defense, first, second, third level, they see Jaden Daniels in space. They want to put him on his backside.
He'll be hit.
He will be hit.
Yeah. RG3 knows all about that.
Absolutely.
I actually think Drake May is better at avoiding the rush than Jaden Daniels is, to be quite
I agree.
honest with
I'm a
you,
May
in the
guy all the
pocket.
way.
Yeah.
All right, so now how
I
about
agree.
May?
I agree. I really do like Drake May. He's going to be my solidified 2 in this class. I think there's a separation between 2 and 3 for me. Drake May was not sitting back and throwing to guys, as I mentioned. North Carolina's offensive line by no means
was a mess.
was one of the top 5 in football. Absolutely not. He was someone that had to consistently make plays outside of structure. But the thing that separates Drake May for me is his hips pre-snap. You also saw that Sam Howell in Carolina, to where when he drops back, a lot of guys will close off their front shoulder. As a right-handed quarterback, they will see the right side of the field and the middle side of the field, and they at limited time have access to the left side of the field. Drake May at times will almost backpedal to keep his hips open to have full access to the field, and he didn't have a Josh Downs this year at least running routes. I know Tez Walker in that whole situation, he's someone I am lower on as well in this class.
He's
however.
more of a vertical guy, and he's not going to get open at all 3 levels.
Absolutely,
right?
but Drake May I think is a guy that can target all 3 levels. I think he has all the arm talent in the world, and I know that's the thing that we talk about a lot with making all the throws. But he absolutely can.
NFL caliber,
yes.
middle of the field throws are all over his tape.
Absolutely.
All over his tape.
Yeah.
Ryan, tell the folks where they can find all your work, man.
Absolutely, yeah. I'm on Twitter. If they don't follow me already, _Ryan Fowler, and all my work is at Bleacher Report.
Make sure you check it out. We thank Ryan for joining us. I'm going to really quickly go through it. Jim Nagy, Matt Miller, Connor Rogers, Paul Schwartz, Chris Trapasso, Greg Cosell, Trevor Sycamore, Art Stapleton, Brad Spielberger, Dane Brugler, Charles Davis, Sam Monson, Jordan Reed, and then all of our Giant Huddles as well.
Breathe, John, breathe.
Lance Zierlein, Daniel Jeremiah, Tom Pelissero, Mike Tannenbaum coming up next week, Cynthia Freeland, Charlie Weiss. That's coming up next week as well. Thank everybody for joining us. Thank you to Michael Becton here. Thank you to Pearson Butler here. Thank you to Madeline for being with us. Thanks to Paul, obviously, and thanks to Dom back in the shop and Charles back in the shop for doing a great job getting us on the air. All those great B-roll and graphics, that's all Charles Erdman did a great job. And Dom making sure we're on time and getting the callers in and doing all that stuff. Excellent job from you as well. Thank you to everybody for being with us all week from Indy. We're coming home to beautiful New Jersey. We'll see you soon. We're back on Monday for another episode of Big Blue Kickoff Live. And, of course, stay tuned to all the great Giant Huddles on the Giants Huddle podcast feed. Go to giants.com/podcast or search for Giants Huddle on your favorite podcast platforms to find those episodes. We'll see you back in Jersey on Monday, everybody. Have a great weekend.